Hello everyone, welcome to Home Cooking with me Hima Subramanian. Christmas is a joyous occasion and we love to bake and make those delicious and yummy cakes and sweet treats. Today I'm going to share 6 fabulous recipes that you can try for this festive season and enjoy with your family and friends. To make the Christmas plum cake, first we have to soak all the dry fruits. Now you can see I have a number of dry fruits here. To the bowl, add about 100 grams of chopped up cherries, 100 grams of Tutti Frutti. Next add about 60 grams of cranberries. If you don't have cranberries, it's fine. You can use the other dry fruits instead. 60 grams golden raisins. Next add 60 grams of black raisins, 60 grams of chopped apricots, 60 grams of chopped dates. Next add about quarter cup of brown sugar. Now if you don't have brown sugar, you can just use the regular granulated white sugar. Next I'm going to add about half teaspoon of cinnamon powder, half teaspoon of nutmeg powder, half teaspoon clove powder and half teaspoon of cardamom powder. Just grate a little bit of the orange rind. Next add about 1 1/4 cup of orange juice. Mix everything and let the dry fruits soak in the orange juice for about 30 minutes. So next we're going to caramelize some sugar. To a saucepan, add about 1 cup of white granulated sugar. Gently mix it. You can see the sugar is gradually caramelizing. So once the sugar is completely dissolved and caramelized, you can see it's got a very nice rich caramel color, a nice dark brown color. At this point, turn off the stove and gradually pour 1 cup of hot water. Just be a little careful while doing this because it tends to bubble up a lot. So once you've added all the hot water, turn on the stove back and just mix it. Once you've poured all the hot water, just mix it so the sugar is completely dissolved. Turn off the stove at this point and pour the caramelized sugar syrup into the bowl. Next add 200 grams of melted unsalted butter. Add 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence and mix everything nicely. The wet ingredients are ready. Now for the dry ingredients. To the bowl, we're going to sieve 300 grams of Maida, that is all-purpose flour. Next add half teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon baking soda, 1 1/2 teaspoons baking powder and sieve the ingredients into the bowl. Now incorporate the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. I'm just going to do this in batches. So after adding a portion of the flour, just mix it in. Now add the remaining flour and mix everything together till it's all well combined. Finally, I'm adding about 100 grams of chopped cashew nuts. You can use any nuts of your choice. You can use almonds, walnuts. I've lined the cake tin with parchment paper at the bottom and on the sides. Now gently transfer the cake batter into the cake tin. Once you've poured the cake batter, gently tap the cake tin. Meanwhile, preheat the oven to about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Bake it for about 160 degrees for about 1 hour and 45 minutes. So after 1 hour and 45 minutes, you can see the cake is baked beautifully. Gently remove from the tin. Remove the parchment paper from the base. You can see how simple and easy this cake is. So there is your rich, eggless, non-alcoholic plum cake that you must try for this Christmas. You can enjoy it with your family and friends. for the Mawa cake, I'm going to first mix the dry ingredients. For this, to the bowl, add 1 cup of Maida or all-purpose flour. So this is a 250 ml cup. Add 1 teaspoon baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon baking soda. Add about 3/4 teaspoon of cardamom powder. Just adding a pinch of salt. So mix the dry ingredients and keep this aside. To another bowl, we're going to mix the wet ingredients, starting with 1/2 cup of granulated white sugar. If you want, you can also use powdered sugar. Next, add about 75 grams of unsalted softened butter. Next, cream the butter and sugar together. Now add the dry ingredients to the butter and sugar mixture. Next, add 1/2 cup of khoya, that is the mawa. To this, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of boiled and cooled milk and 1/4 cup of curd. You can also use yogurt. So now beat everything together. Next, add 1/2 teaspoon vanilla essence. So beat the batter nicely till it's nice and creamy. So finally, I'm just going to add a few saffron strands and mix it into the batter. So it's going to be a very nice, beautiful, wholesome cake with all the flavors of cardamom, saffron and vanilla essence. So I've taken a small cake tin. So grease the bottom and the sides of the tin with a little butter. Place the butter paper to the base. Chop a few pistachios to garnish on top of the cake. Preheat the oven at 180 degrees for 15 minutes. Bake the cake for about 45 minutes at 180 degrees centigrade. So the Mawa cake is done. It smells incredible. Now I can't actually wait to have a piece of that cake. A good indication to check if the cake is cooked through is when you put a skewer stick through it, it comes out nice and clean. So this is a good indication that the cake is cooked through. So you can see the lovely golden color on top of the cake. It's got a lovely crust. Cool the cake completely before you cut it into pieces. For the chocolate biscuit cake, I've taken 1 cup of walnuts. You can also use cashew nuts. Toast the walnuts for about 5 minutes on medium flame. You can see the nuts are nicely roasted. Turn off the stove. Chop the toasted walnuts. So you just roughly chop them. For the biscuit base, I've taken 400 grams of digestive biscuits. Just roughly break the biscuits into small pieces. Don't break it into very tiny bits. Make sure the pieces are about medium size. Next step, take a pan, add 150 grams of sugar, 50 grams of unsweetened cocoa powder. Mix it together. Next, add 200 ml of water. You can see the cocoa powder has dissolved completely. Next, I'm going to keep the pan on the stove top. To this, I'm going to add 150 grams of unsalted butter. Make sure the butter is at room temperature while adding into the cocoa syrup. To this, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence. Once the butter is completely melted, let the cocoa syrup boil for about 5 minutes on low flame. You can see the syrup has come together beautifully. Turn off the stove. Now cool the syrup till it comes to room temperature. Add half of the roasted walnuts. You can add any nuts of your choice. You can add badam, that is almonds or cashews or walnuts. So this just gives you a nice crunch. I've lined a cake tin with butter paper at the bottom. Grease it with a little butter on all sides. Pour the prepared mixture into the cake tin. Level it. Gently press it down. Now I'm going to refrigerate this for about 30 minutes. Now I'm going to make the chocolate ganache. For this, I've taken 1 cup of fresh cream. This is about 200 ml fresh cream. Keep the flame on low. I'm going to add 200 grams of dark cooking chocolate. Gently mix it with a whisk till all the chocolate is melted completely. Turn off the stove. The ganache is ready. The biscuit base has set beautifully. Pour the prepared ganache over the biscuit base. Gently spread it evenly. And just give it a little shake so it's nice and even. Refrigerate for about 3 to 4 hours till it's completely set. For the chocolate fudge, first I'm going to roast a few nuts. For this, I've taken half cup of cashew nuts to a pan, half cup of almonds, that is badam, and quarter cup of pistachios. Now you can use any nuts you like. You can use pecans, macadamia nuts, walnuts. So you can also toast these nuts by putting them on a tray, and you can toast them in the oven. So the choice is yours. So I'm just toasting these on a pan over the stove top. The nuts are toasted nicely. Remove them from the pan and cool it completely. So I'm just going to roughly chop the toasted nuts. So I've chopped the nuts, keep them aside. So we're going to melt the chocolate using a double boiler. Now instead of a double boiler, I'm just using a regular saucepan. Pour enough water. Let the water heat up. So the water is nice and hot. So reduce the flame to a nice low. I'm just keeping a glass bowl. You can also use a steel bowl to do this. For this recipe, I'm using about 450 grams of dark chocolate gallets. Now if you can't find these, don't worry about it. You can use any dark cooking chocolate that's available for you. To this, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of softened unsalted butter. Next, add 350 grams of condensed milk. This is sweetened condensed milk. So this is the best way to melt the chocolate. You don't want to directly keep it over the flame. So you can see how gradually and beautifully the chocolate is melting along with the butter and the condensed milk. So this is about 56% of cocoa. This is a very good quality bittersweet chocolate. So you can see the chocolate is melted completely and the mixture is thickened. I'm going to remove it. Next, add the roasted chopped nuts. I'm adding a few raisins. So you can add cranberries, you can add the dark currants, you can add cherries if you like. Just mix the nuts and raisins nicely into the chocolate mixture. Make sure it's all well combined. So if you want to chop the nuts a bit smaller, you can do that as well. I like them a nice bite size, I like them a little big, so I've chopped them a little bigger. So you can also make this fudge without any dry fruits or nuts and make it plain. It's up to you. Adding the nuts will give a lovely crunch to the fudge. So now I'm going to set the fudge in the tray. For the fudge, I'm going to grease an 8-inch tin. Just grease the base. Just grease it with a little butter or oil. It's up to you. I'm going to line the cake tin with foil paper. You can also use butter paper or parchment paper to line the tin. So lining the cake tin like this will be easy because once the fudge sets in, it will be easy to remove from the tin. Spread out the chocolate nut mixture evenly in the tin. And cool it till it comes to room temperature. Once it comes to room temperature, close the tin with another foil paper and let it sit for about 3 to 4 hours. So if you feel the fudge is too soft, you can refrigerate it for about an hour to make it a little more firm before you cut into pieces. Now you can see the chocolate nut fudge is set beautifully. It's nice and firm. Remove it from the cake tin. Remove the foil paper and you can cut into pieces and serve it immediately. If you want to store the chocolate fudge for a longer time, put it in an airtight container and you can refrigerate it for about 10 to 15 days. I've taken about 100 grams of mixed Tutti Frutti to a bowl. Add half tablespoon of flour and just mix it gently. So just make sure all the Tutti Frutti is coated with the flour. So next I'm going to sieve all the dry ingredients. Using a 250 ml measuring cup, I've taken 1.5 cups of Maida, that is all-purpose flour. To this add half teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon baking powder. Sieve the dry ingredients and keep it aside. So next I'm going to mix the wet ingredients. For this, to a bowl add 3/4 cup of granulated white sugar. Add 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence. Next add 3/4 cup of curd or yogurt. So now you can mix the curd and sugar nicely using a whisk. So make sure all the sugar is dissolved. Next I'm going to add half cup of melted butter. This is unsalted butter, and whisk everything together. So now you can see it's all well combined. It's become nice and creamy and thick. Next I'm going to add the dry ingredients in 2 parts. Add half of the flour first. Mix it well using a spatula. Now add the remaining flour and mix it all in. Make sure it's all well combined. This is a very simple cake. You can make it in minutes with very simple ingredients. Next add 1/4 cup of milk. This is boiled and cooled milk. So after adding the milk, mix everything together till it's all well combined. So now you can see you've got a nice smooth and creamy batter. It's got a nice pouring consistency. So if you feel your batter is too thick, you can just add a little bit of milk to get the right consistency. Now the batter is ready. Just add the Tutti Frutti and mix it all in. I've lined the cake tin with butter paper and dusted with flour. Pour the prepared batter into the tin. Spread it out evenly. Just gently tap it to release any of the air bubbles present. So just add a little Tutti Frutti on top. This is going to be your final touch. Preheat the oven for 15 minutes to 180 degrees centigrade. We're going to bake this at 180 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, you can see the Tutti Frutti cake looks absolutely gorgeous. You can see this lovely rich golden color on top. Remove the cake from the tin. Remove the butter paper. The Tutti Frutti cake is ready to be served. You can see how soft, fluffy and spongy it is. Wow, it makes for a perfect snack. You can serve it for tea time or just any time. Kids will love it. In fact, my family members, they all loved it. I've made it 2 to 3 times already. So I'm serving this delicious, fluffy, eggless Tutti Frutti cake with some nice tea by the side. You can enjoy it however you like. For the cake, I'm going to mix the batter first. For the chocolate cake, first I'm going to mix the dry ingredients. For this, I've taken 1.5 cups of Maida or all-purpose flour. To this, I'm going to add 1 cup of sugar. Next, add 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons baking powder, 1.5 teaspoons baking soda. Mix everything together. Keep this aside. Next, I'm going to mix the wet ingredients. For this, take 1/2 cup of oil, one cup of milk, 1 teaspoon vanilla essence, now pour all the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients. Now mix both together. Beat the flour and the wet ingredients together so you can see the batter has come together beautifully. Now I'm going to add 1/2 cup of hot water. Beat it again. The batter is ready. So I've taken a stainless steel tin to bake the cake. First I'm going to grease it. You can either use oil or butter. Make sure you grease the tin properly on all sides. Add a little flour and dust the tin so it coats all the sides nicely. Instead of using butter paper, this is a good technique to follow because once the tin cools, it's easier when you remove the cake from the tin. So as you can see, I've used a bed of rock salt for baking the cake. Now you can also use sand if you want. I've placed a stand. So I'm going to place a plate on this. I'm going to keep the tin inside the cooker. Bake the cake for 1.5 hours on low flame. That looks amazing. So you can see the cake is baked beautifully. It took almost 1.5 hours to bake the cake, so I've left the flame on low throughout. So don't keep opening the pressure cooker to check if it's baked, because then it might it might dip in the center. So make sure that you open the pressure cooker only after 1.5 hours to check if the cake is cooked. So now I'm going to insert a skewer stick to make sure that it's cooked through. So you can see the stick is nice and clean. So this is an indication that the cake is baked perfectly and right through. So you can also see that the cake has left the sides. So once it's baked completely, it will release from the sides of the tin. So this is also another indication that the cake is baked. Before you remove the cake from the tin, make sure it comes to room temperature. So make sure you cool it completely. So I'm going to make the chocolate ganache for the cake. For this I've taken 200 ml of fresh cream. So I have chopped about 250 grams of dark chocolate. Now this is semi-sweet dark chocolate. Keep the flame on low while melting the chocolate. You don't want to burn the chocolate. So you can see it's gradually melting. You can see the chocolate has melted beautifully. It's nice and glossy. The ganache is ready. Turn off the stove and keep it aside. It's released beautifully. I'm just going to flip it over. You can see it's nice and soft and moist. It's so soft and spongy. Pour the ganache over the cake. Make sure to cover the cake completely. I have some store-bought chocolate wafers. Break them into small pieces and stick them onto the cake. You can decorate the cake any way you want. Here I've used chocolate wafers. You can use chocolate shavings or roasted almond slices to decorate the cake as well. The second edition of our home cooking book is now available on our website 21frames.in. I'll give you the link in the description. You can go and check it out. The book is currently available only in India for now, so you can place your orders on 21frames.in.